Alright folks, I've got a cello to show you today, something a bit different. This is another passion of mine. It's actually one of the first instruments I learned. I started on a uke when I was 3, I started cello at 6. So they've always been very special to me. As much as I love guitars, I love cellos as well. And the same thing with these, you're always looking for instruments that you can sell, I have to straighten the bridge here, to students, it survived, to students that are not junk, terrible. As with guitars, eBay and Amazon is awash with junky basswood instruments, usually made in China. All basswood. They kind of even try to make them look like spruce and maple sometimes. I'm not anti-basswood. Basswood has its place, but I think when it's substituted for the traditional materials and with bowed instruments, you get a much lower quality sound and projection. So this is my first look at a Cervini cello. And it's very common for cheap cello makers or bowed string makers to use Italianate names, because the great traditions of violin making are mostly from Italian cities, at least in the beginning they were. So you'll often find sort of Italianate names to try and sell the instrument. It sounds like it'll be a good cello if it has an Italianate name. So this is a Cervini. And this one here, the only reason I bought this one, firstly, is because it had some shipping damage and I fixed it. No real issues to the instrument, just simple fix. And secondly, because it has a real spruce top and a real maple back and side. So even though it's a cheap cello, it does have the proper woods, which is an absolute must for me. If it doesn't have a spruce top, I'm not interested. They usually sound dull, and they usually fit them with extremely poor parts, and you're just fighting the cello, and kids just quit. It's just no fun. So my minimum requirements is that it does have a spruce. Even if it's a ply spruce, it's better than mystery wood or basswood that a lot of cellos are made out of. So this one here has a spruce. I just barely got a little rosin on this new bow, so it probably won't sound great, but I don't have the end pin out, so I'm just balancing it. Slightly out of tune too, but it plays. Another thing that you really should look for, but can't always find in this price range, this is a $300-400 cello here, is it's nice if you have ebony parts. This is ebonized, it's maple painted black. At least it's a decent hardwood. I know what the wood is. I prefer ebony. But sometimes on student cellos you can't get ebony, so if it has rosewood or maple, and they always paint it black to look like ebony, what they call ebonized. It's not as ideal, but a lot of times if you're shopping for a beginner cello in the $200, $300, $400 range, you're just not going to get ebony. So if you can get maple or rosewood and it's painted black, that's the next best option. It has a Tomastic style tailpiece with the metal fine tuners, which are really good for students. It's a very plain wood cello. I'll turn it around. You'll see there's no flame on the maple. It's very plain maple, but that doesn't matter that much. The fact that it is maple and not basswood or some other mystery wood is the key element here. It has a real maple bridge on it, which is just being cut. The action is reasonable. The pegs hold. Another problem about cheap cellos is the pegs aren't fit right, and they slip and they drive you absolutely nuts, and the kids just quit. They just stop playing because they're always fighting the cello. These aren't ebony, but I did a little extra shaping on the taper so that they fit better. and stick. Of course, you get it close with the friction pegs, and then you dial in the actual tuning with your fine tuners down at the tailpiece. That's how you're supposed to work with the tuning on these instruments. So yeah, it's pretty decent for a $300-400 cello. I think it's all right. I think it'll get somebody started. It's got a nice long pin in it. It looks like, I don't know what the strings are. They have the string windings that suggest that they are tomastic dominants, but I think they're copies. So they are something else. So another thing that somebody might want to do on this cello is to replace the strings. They don't sound too bad to me. The weakest part of any cello outfit is often the bow. And this bow, although it is Brazil wood, so it's the right wood, and it has a rosewood frog instead of an ebony frog, which is always a telltale sign that it's a cheap student bow. And when I got it, it was tight and it lost its camber, so it was straight like that. You really want it to be like that, with that bow and that downward bow in the middle. What is that, concave? So I had to slacken it off and get some camber into the bow. So it's a cheap bow. The cello is actually better than the bow. So another thing that somebody might do in buying an outfit like this is to maybe get a Glasser horsehair fiberglass bow, which is probably better than this cheap wooden bow. I mean, this will do you until it wears out, but it is really not a high quality bow. And that's just the case with a lot of these entry-level cello outfits. They put in the lowest quality bows in there, and I have to replace them a lot of times. But at least this one's horsehair. It's not synthetic hair, which sounds horrible and plays terrible. So somebody can start with this outfit the way it is. You can upgrade parts, but it's a decent package to get going. So if you're looking to dabble with cello, I got a lot of guitar guys that come and say, hey, I just fancy a cello. I don't want to spend a lot of money. What can I get for $200, $300, $400? And here's your answer. This is a Cervini, I think an HC100 model. So it's the entry-level model. They probably make higher models with real ebony parts, better woods, that kind of thing. But at least their entry-level is proper spruce, proper maple, reasonable strings, real maple bridge, pegs that now fit okay, and it holds tune, and somebody can learn on this. Be a perfectly good instrument. There are instruments that are way worse than this, a lot worse than this, out there floating around. There's tons of them on eBay, mystery wood, basswood jobs that, I've had one or two of them and I just don't buy them anymore. No matter how cheap they are, I just don't buy them. They're awful. They're poorly made. They sound terrible. The parts are awful. And I can't in good conscience, even with a setup, sell those to people or to parents for kids. They're just terrible instruments. So I look for instruments that have real spruce and maple and reasonable parts that can be upgraded. That's where I start. So there's a lot of instruments out there that I will not buy and not feature on this channel simply because they do not meet requirements, those basic requirements. But anyway, if you're interested in a cello, here's one option. Not high-end, just student quality, but something you can get started with. This is the Savini cello outfit. All right, folks, see you next time.